Here, new episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Atlanta rhythm section, and I've had some requests to feature this legendary band, and ARS actually formed in Doraville, Georgia in 1970, and they were the house band at a recording studio in Doraville called Studio One, and some very famous bands actually recorded there. Leonard Skinner, 38 Special, Elf, Stillwater, and a whole bunch of bands. But Atlanta rhythm section was the house band, backing up people in the studio. And then eventually they became a full-fledged band, and their popularity erupted almost as soon as they hit the scene. Definitely legends, and I want to thank the viewers out there for requesting this group, because I definitely knew the group, but I'd never really dove into their music until now. So buckle up, because here we go. And I know I mentioned this a lot in my videos, but I wanted to prove that I actually did receive requests for ARS, and here's 7 of the requests right here. I've seen dozens of them, but here's 7 right here. And in the guitar department in ARS's music, as far as the original lineup, we have 2 late great legends here, Barry Bailey and J.R. Cobb, and unfortunately both of these players have passed away in recent years. I think J.R. Cobb passed away in 2019 and Barry passed away in 2022, but definitely a powerhouse, dynamic duo, and Barry was primarily the lead guitarist. J.R. played a lot of rhythm, but they did come together and kind of weave guitar parts together and kind of danced around each other a lot. Great guitarists, and commonly overlooked too. So the chord-based and rhythm guitar parts in this lesson came from the first 3 Atlanta Rhythm Section albums, and during the course of their career they've released 13 studio albums, 2 live albums, 7 compilations, 15 singles, and 2 of those singles were top 10 hits. And here are the album covers where I pulled, music for this lesson. With the opening, that was me playing around with Who You Gonna Run To. That's from the 3rd annual Pipe Dream, which is ARS's 3rd album. And it's this snappy, kind of funky groove like this. Something like that. So we're doing this kind of, or at least I'm hybrid picking that first part. I'm not sure if that's actually how they played that, but that's what I incorporated for that first lick. Like the first part of that riff, I guess. But right there, you're basically doing a low E to that G, and then I'm hybrid picking the open D right there. And then you're going to grab this E note, and then you're going to move up to that G right there on the D string. Like that. And there's like another low E before you go to that G. And then do the exact same thing, but then instead of ending on that G, now you're going to move to D right there on the A string. Like that. So the first time up to G, the second time down to D, and then after that second time, that low E, G to low E, and then it's just power chords, E to D, A to G, kind of walking down. And then like a little part of E major, I'm just playing the low E and the A, and also that G sharp on the G string. So it's not really E7, because I'm muting the D string out. Like that. I do the same thing basically twice in a row. Right there, play the open A and D string and then hammer on like the top part of that E5, like that. And then you start the verse riff. And right there, the low E to the E octave, low E to that D, low E, and then you're kind of pulling off that C sharp to B. And then do it again. And then right there, do the chord hits again, that E, D, A to G power chords. Right there, and then we're going to move to A, and before we go to A, we're going to mimic the same riff, but we're going to start the same way too, that open D and G string and then the top part of that A5 power chord now. And then do the same riff that we did in E, but now it's an A over here. Right, open A, the A octave, open A to that G, open A, F sharp pulled off to E. Then the same chord hits. And it actually kind of moves in the next part of the song right there. But cool song, cool groove, and I like that kind of slinky, you know, kind of laid back groove, and you can find that in a lot of ARS's music. Cool song. Next up's the opening riff from Ernestine. This is from the first Atlanta Rhythm Section album, and it's something like this. Something like that, short and sweet here, an E flat 7 to start with right there, and we're separating the root note from the top part of the chord, and I'm hybrid picking right there. And then, so that's kind of unusual, at E flat 7, and then we're grabbing, you know, this D flat to E, and then you're basically grabbing that. So that's an implied, you know, E flat 7 sus 4 now. Because we're going from that, you know, something like that. That's really unusual. And then do the exact same thing in B flat. Now you're going to hybrid pick, you know, the root and the top part of that B flat 7, and then you're going to roll right there on the low E, and then you're playing part of a B flat 7 sus 4 like that. So really different kind of move, you know, with the chords. And then finally end up with that E flat, D flat to B flat power chord hits. Really interesting riff right there. Next up's the song Love Me Just a Little. This is also from the first ARS album, and it totally has this Beatle-esque kind of intro right here like this. Something like that. So A minor, and we're strumming it there in the beginning. And then you're basically going from A minor to an A minor over G, like that. And there's like kind of an early strum, and then you hold it and then strum it 3 more times, like that. And then A minor over F sharp, like that. And then basically there's 3 Fs to an E. Right? And then go back and do the first part again, that A minor, A minor over G, A minor over F sharp. And then 4 strums on that F. And then an E7 sharp 9, the Hendrix chord. And then you start the next riff, which kind of opens like the verse right there. So right there, think that 70s inversion, you know, that's like a G over B right there. We're doing it like that. And then it's a D over A like that, just a 7th fret bar on the D, G, and B strings. Then you're going to kind of walk your way into an A5. So that that C to C sharp and then that E to A, and then strum that A5 power chord, and then bend that B note up to C sharp, and end up on that A. Groovy riff right there, that's cool. Next up's the song What You Gonna Do About It? This is from Back Up Against the Wall, the second ARS album, and there's some moves in this riff that kind of remind me of the previous example, Love Me Just a Little, but what you gonna do about it? Something like this. Something like that. So it's kind of a funky A5. And right there, definitely they seem fond of kind of rolling into chords like that. So that C to C sharp, once again, that E to A, we saw that in the previous example. And then a funky, G over B, which we had this in the previous example too, to that D over A. So you kind of scratch and sniff the G over B, and then a little bit of that D over A, and then back to that G over B again. Or I guess there's kind of like a hammer-on pull-off right there, like that. Last time right here, it's like an F5 scratch, G5 scratch, A5. Right? Cool riff, and it's kind of cool to see like a similar move but a different song, and the groove's different, and just kind of, recycling information right there. But that's what all great guitarists do. If you find something that works, do it again. Next up's the song I Must Be Loved. This is also from the album Back Up Against the Wall. And this section of the song that I'm kind of quoting right here takes place around 2:13, but you hear this riff multiple times in this song. But around 2:13, they really kind of develop it or open it up like this. Something like that. So we're in G, and he's basically doing this kind of spelled out, implied, just like G7 or, just G major. Because we're grabbing that G, sliding that A into B, and then catching this D to G right there. So it's, an implied G major arpeggio. And then right there, when we're doing that, that F to that G, that's an implied, G7, and then that E to that G is an implied, G6. And then that B flat, C to B flat, and then you start it again, start on that G. Course, then just do an F to G power chord back and forth 3 times, and then so slide that E into that F, and then grab E to the open D, and then smear bend that B flat, and then do all that again, the F to G, and then the single note business. Cool song, and I love that riff right there. Of course, the whole band's hitting that. Next up's Join the Race to Inner Space. This is from Third Annual Pipe Dream, and it's this fuzzed out Hendrix chord riff like this. short and sweet here, but we're doing a bend and release on this G note. So a bend and release on that G, F to D, and then you're walking up that G, A, C to D like that. And then kind of scratch and sniff a D7 sharp 9, the Hendrix chord. And then do it again. And I'm a sucker for any of those kind of funky Hendrix chord riffs like that. That's really cool. Okay, last but not least is The War Is Over. This is from the album Third Annual Pipe Dream once again, and this is a clean guitar part. It's finger-picked, and it's really, really cool, like this. Like that, and it keeps going. But for that first chord right there, you should definitely recognize that. That's appeared a lot here on my channel. That's an A minor add 9, like that. Take that A, move it back to an F sharp right there. Now it's an implied F sharp minor 11 flat 5, like that. Take that F sharp, move it back to an F. Now it's an implied F major 7 sharp 11 with no third. So we had that to this to that. Then the open A, you're going to grab this E and C together, move that up a whole step, and then move up to this G and E, and that's like an implied A minor 7 or A7, like that. And then right here, we're going to move to this. So that's an implied E7 sus4 right there with the low E starting. And then move to E7 right there. Right? Then we're going to go to that A minor add 9, but we're going to add a high A right there and also start on the open A string. Like that. So it's just a modification of the A minor add 9. We're just adding the high A instead of that high E open. And then open up that high E the second time. And then do that again. The E7 sus4, E7. And then finish off with that A minor add 9 with the A on top. And then the last note's that A note right there on the D string. So I'm a sucker for like moody chord progressions, and of course finger picking's really cool too, like that. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with this look at the chords of Atlanta rhythm section. And once again, I want to thank the viewers out there. You have patiently, asked for this group, and I just needed some time to really wrap their music around my head. Because I was definitely, familiar with some of their hits, and I'd never really done a deep dive into their early, music. And their success and their chart-topping songs didn't really appear until much later. I really just kind of focused on those first 3 albums. I was trying to move forward, but I got hung up because there was so much cool stuff all over those first 3. And anyway, that's kind of what happens whenever I start, hitting a certain band or guitarist. If I get locked on their early stuff, sometimes it's really hard to kind of move past that. And I think it just kind of gives you like a good foundation in the band, because from here, you can definitely investigate some of their later music and kind of see where it came from. But there's nothing better than going all the way back to the very beginning, the origin of whatever the band is, and then kind of, experiment and kind of branch out from there and notice like where they went or where their music went. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.